Welcome back to the NetG podcast. This is Aurora, and we're going to talk about the next council, which is the Crystal School Council. This is another big area of transition when we're talking about education. So the Crystal School Council is going to mainly oversee the transition of children's education. So we're talking about, what the typical traditionary schooling covers, which is about ages 5, right, to 18. But the Crystal School Council will also have specific oversight as well to transition higher education. So what we know now as college or trade schools, things like that. I think that when we talk about higher education, that's going to go into a whole lot of other industries to transition, which are the various types of degrees people get, like when we're talking about medical school or law school or getting your PhD or your master's in something. But basically, the blueprint will be similar. So, but the main focus during the transition will be children's educations. Somewhere down the line, there will then be a focus on transitioning higher education into something different as well. But our main focus and priority is going to be the children's education system. And so the idea of the Crystal School Council as a whole is that, as we all know, the education system is very broken, but it can transition. This is one of those industries or sectors where this can easily be transitioned with the proper blueprint. And so one of the first things that the Crystal School Council is going to deal with is the blueprint of education. There's a lot more families and parents who, since 2020 and the pandemic have decided to homeschool their children, right? Due to a lot of the issues that we see going on in schools. And so this is also a blueprint that can easily be applied to homeschooling as well, whether that is in just a family setting of doing homeschooling, whether that is homeschooling pods, whether that is, alternative schooling, which they have available now. There's a lot of small schools who, host a small group of students, and they do alternative schooling. So these blueprints can be applied to all of that. But one of the main transitions to happen here is the shift from left brain learning to right brain learning. So currently, amongst many other issues about schooling, one of the main issues is that traditional schooling has become extremely left brain dominant and almost completely absent in terms of right brain learning. So left brain learning is logic, reason, analytical thinking. So that is what we see now, is that it's all about memorization of information. It's all about just being able to regurgitate information. It's all about test taking. It's all about having to, most public schooling, they have to pass state testing and these different things, right? And it's all very, very analytical in nature. And so we see a lot of the detriments of this, right? First of all, is that every child learns differently, right? Just like every adult learns differently. And in the current system, there is really not a lot of variety in terms of ways of teaching children. There is, there probably is some wiggle room here and there, but mostly all the children are expected to learn in the same way, and they're expected to be able to regurgitate, memorize, and that's kind of what a lot of the issues have been that we've seen with the education programs, are that Children are given way too much homework. They're given way too many tests. They are expected to have a focus level that is just not real. It's not realistic. Children are designed to play. That is how children mainly learn. Now, yes, there's going to still be those kind of basic learning skills, right? Like learning to read and write, learning to, do basic addition and subtraction and math, right? Those I think are just really good basics for anybody to have. But right brain learning is much different. It's based a lot more on play, which is essential for child development. We see how now a lot of schools, they've cut out recess. They've cut out a lot of the more creative classes. So that is what the Crystal School Council is going to be assisting in transitioning the curriculums, the structures, the blueprints of schools. So play is the most important. Creative learning is also very important. Imagination. And also hands-on learning skills through experience, through hands-on doing things rather than reading it from a book or watching a video on it or hearing someone talk about it. It's bringing back the art of developing real skills, right? And that's something that has been just completely lost. Now, when we're talking about higher education, again, there's a lot of issues with that structure as well. First of all, the cost is absurd. The cost of college, the cost of higher learning, that is going to need to be phased out. Again, even if we look at higher education, we see the same problems. We see that everyone is expected to learn in the same way. They are expected to pass tests, which again, tests are very left brain. Some children and some adults do excel at things like memorization and test taking, but a lot don't. And it is not a good gauge of how someone has learned the material. It is not a good gauge at how skilled someone is. It is simply a good gauge of how well they can memorize something. So the higher education is also going to need to be transitioned because they also lack practical applications. Most people who are doing higher education for whatever field, by the time they get into said field, then that is where they start getting hands-on experience. So when you take the time amount that it takes to get higher education and to get a degree, and then you add in more time on top of that after they've already completed their degree, now they have to spend years gaining actual experience, practical application. And it's crazy. People can spend 7 to 10 years doing higher education and then getting experience just to be able to actually do their said job properly. We know the whole issue that is going on with things like student loan debt. Like all of these problems are a product of the way that these systems function. So the Crystal School Council, the roles and responsibility of this council is made up of beings who feel a strong resonance and role to assist with the education of humanity. The Crystal Schools are the 5D educational centers and systems that will ensure pure education for Crystal children and adults. This council is responsible to meet and discuss the evolving landscape of education, as well as the challenges for both parents and teachers that can be solved with love and higher solutions. This council is responsible for helping to train both parents and teachers on how to do their own inner work, as well as to teach children without programming or control. This council is also a co-creative council who will help develop curriculums and blueprints for the various, levels of education. This council is also responsible for overseeing the light centers, which are basically the adult versions of the Crystal Schools. So the light centers would be what is equivalent to higher education, right? This council will discuss different topics and ideas to share that will best assist all of humanity in the spiritual evolution. So this council will be the leaders of education. They will put the children first above all else to ensure that the next generation of souls is brought up in unconditional love. And so the first decree of this council is the Crystal School Education Decree. As decreed by source, all education, including higher education, such as college and graduate programs, will be dissolved in their current structure and or transitioned into crystal schools and light centers. The Crystal School Education Decree also establishes the right of every parent and family to choose to provide homeschooling to their children in accordance with the Crystal School Blueprint. All children and adults of the United States will have free and open source access to education materials, mentorships, and learning for every sector and skill, as well as access to higher consciousness information. All schools that choose to transition into the Crystal School Blueprint must implement full training for teachers, staff, and parents. And this is for children, who are under 18. School guidelines and rules must be in accordance with universal law and right action and will be overseen by the local and state Crystal School councils. Each school that agrees to transition must hold a minimum of 3 open houses for parents to discuss the transition, allow for feedback, perspective, ideas, and solutions to be implemented in accordance with the Crystal School outline. Higher education centers that agree to transition into light centers will also need to undergo training for all teachers and staff, as well as to immediately provide transitionary classes to their students. All students may also choose to attend light centers virtually. All education and child caretaking will be free and without charge to any child, parent, or adult. So the idea is that all education needs to be properly funded by the NetG, right? And so again, this goes back to the introduction where the vision is, of course, that the NetG as a whole will be responsible for making sure that all resources that are currently available in this country, and again, this can be applied to other countries, gets directed to the right places. It is such a myth that there is not enough funding or enough resources for all of these systems to transition. It is a lie. It is simply that our current government refuses to actually utilize funds and resources for the highest good. There is more than enough. And again, when the financial system transitions, when the business systems transition, there is going to be such a more open flow of equal energy exchange and resources that a lot of these industries and sectors will not even need that much funding. So it's an abundance, prosperity for all kind of blueprint. Education should be free. Childcare should be free. And again, the people that are working in these industries also deserve to be properly compensated. It is absolutely crazy to have people who are working in education with children, childcare, higher education, who are not properly paid for their time and their effort and the love that they are giving. It is absolutely insane. So that is the first thing that is going to be implemented and changed. Now, this is the vision for the Crystal School Blueprint. The Crystal Schools were created by the Divine Mother in her wish for all children, adults, and teachers to return to their natural states of joy, play, creativity, unity, and harmony. The foundational principles of the Crystal Schools are universal law and right action. Universal laws are the guiding principles that all higher selves align with, as they are the cosmic laws of oneness. Right action is the principle that is based on self-love, discipline, and service to others. The mission is to create crystal schools for all children and adults to return to their childlike wonder and innocence, for all beings on the planet to embrace their own inner child. Humanity is returning to their natural state of divinity, which includes joy, laughter, kindness, service to others, synergy, cooperation, creativity, freedom, and expression. The vision of the Crystal Schools is to create a higher consciousness school for children and young adults that is based in love, creativity, and play. Traditional schooling is based off left brain thinking, rational, logical, and linear, memorization, and testing. Crystal Schools are based on the unique energetics of each child and encourages them to create and play using the right side of their brain. Our natural state as divine beings is having full use of our brain. Our right brain is the feminine side. This connects to source, higher thought, creative genius, inspiration, and intuition. The left brain, which is the masculine brain, analyzes and sorts through all of the information coming through the right brain and decides what is useful and what is to be acted upon. Due to toxins and programmings, our right brain begins to shut down after childhood. We are slowly stripped of our creativity and instead are forced into left brain only thinking. This causes us to be stuck in left brain loops of logic, analyzation, linear thinking, and close-mindedness. It is only when the right brain and left brain are working together do we have access to our full genius and divine intelligence. 3D schooling teaches only left brain thinking. This will slowly shut down the right brain and leads to many issues that adults experience, such as fear, anxiety, depression, disconnection, etc. The Crystal Schools focus 90% on right brain learning and 10% on left brain learning. Children's right brains are given time to fully develop through play and creativity, expression, and experience. All children under the ages of 21 are part of the Rainbow and Crystal Children waves. These children are very pure essences and they are incarnating with very high consciousness. These children are extremely sensitive, empathic, and intuitive, and they require environments that allow them to learn, grow, and expand. 3D schooling does not fit these children and their learning styles. Each child has a different way of learning, different gifts and abilities, and different interests. Children should be free to explore their interests as well as develop life skills that will encourage independence, self-love, and self-sufficiency. So part of the training and just the overall kind of focuses in terms of parents, teachers, adults, right, is in order to provide pure environments for children to properly learn and to also properly develop without programming, it is very important that the adults do the inner work as well. And so one of the things that the Crystal School Council really focuses on is helping the parents and teachers also do that own inner work, because what's happened is that the world as a whole has lost its innocence. The world is not a child-safe place, which is why we have the problems we have. So we not only have to physically create better spaces and blueprints for children, but as a whole, we need to make the world and humanity and ourselves safe spaces for children. We have to get in tune with our own inner child. So some of the practices that the Crystal School Council will be focused on as well, of kind of these are the main attributes, the main traits that as adults we can work on embodying to be better parents, be better teachers, be better human beings to provide a world that is both safe and amazing for children. So inner child healing. As a collective, returning to innocence and embodying our childlike wonder is key to healing this planet. The atrocities that have occurred on this planet, from the abuse, neglect, trafficking of children, to the abuse and suppression of the feminine, to the raping and pillaging of Mother Earth, all stem from a lack of innocence. The ego mind strips us of all childlike essence and instead turns us into quote-unquote adults. We become cold, logical, we lack feeling, we become controlling, analyzing, judgmental, and powering over others. In order to help the abused and suppressed souls on the planet, we must first make space for the childlike essence and innocence. If there is no place for innocence in the world, innocence cannot be found. We as divine beings must make the first step in healing our own inner child before seeking to help the external world. By healing our own inner wounds and allowing innocence back in, we create a space for healing that can trickle out and heal the entire planet. Childlike wonder. Children are always in wonder and excitement. They see everything as new and interesting and are filled with natural curiosity to learn, expand, and try new things. Only as adults do we become programmed to be robotic, routined, and to look at everything through the lens of past experiences. We become hardened to the magic of living, and instead we become pessimistic, resentful, and fearful of life. We close ourselves off from new experiences because we are always expecting a lower outcome. To return to childlike wonder is to return to a state of inspiration and magic. It is to dissolve all of the belief systems which have created a fearful perspective of the world. Fear is what deprives us of natural creativity, openness, and wonder. Fear and belief systems are the wall that is put up between us and the limitless possibilities that exist. As we return to childlike wonder, we return to our organic sense of magic, miracles, and excitement for life. Healing wounds. All wounds stem from childhood. Due to programming, deep belief systems, every child is ingrained with the ego program mind from birth. Other beings also experience traumatic events, abuse, neglect, or abandonment as children. Any rejection of self that was held within the parent is then inherited by the child. Parent expectations, control, attachment, rejection, or judgment of the child cause extreme damage to the child's consciousness. In order to heal our childhood wounds, we must hold deep forgiveness for ourselves, for our parents, all others, and all experiences. We must make peace with our past, as it was all divinely planned to help us arrive exactly where we are. Once we let go of the underlying anger, resentment, attachment, regret, guilt, shame, etc., we are free to be the inner child again. We put down those walls and those blocks to opening our hearts, and we begin to truly allow ourselves to show unconditional love again. Kindness. Children are innately kind and giving, as this is the nature of unconditional love. However, as we get older, we are programmed into different beliefs, such as kindness is weakness, or don't be too kind to people, they can take advantage of you, or treat people how they treat you. These programmings take away our natural kindness for others and our natural urge to give and help others. We become self-important, only focused on our own wants, needs, and desires, and we become cold. Universal kindness is what unlocks the inner child within us. We have also become programmed to be unkind to ourselves. We judge ourselves, hold ourselves to high expectations, and beat ourselves up with guilt and shame. When we change the way we treat ourselves and show unconditional kindness, we begin to radiate this out to all other beings, and we once again embody our true childlike nature. We give to others, we receive from others, and we enjoy helping others. Imagination. Imagination is our ability to access unlimited possibilities and to think of magical things. As children, we have not yet closed down our imagination, which is why children love to play. Play is a natural state. Play equals creativity and imagination. As adults, we are stripped of all imagination and told to enter the quote unquote real world and to be realistic. These are ego mind behaviors that keep us seeing everything in gray rather than bright. Many also confuse imagination with fantasy. Fantasy is rooted in ego wants, needs, and desires, whereas imagination is rooted in divine thought and love. Fantasy are thoughts and daydreams that never actually manifest and keep us outside the present moment. Imagination is when we bring our divine thoughts and inspirations into reality through creativity, play, and expression. When we use our imagination, we use it to dream for the highest good and for all of humanity, not just for self. Authenticity. Children are authentic, meaning they are their real selves. They have no concept of pretending to be someone they are not. They are not yet conditioned to act a certain way or speak a certain way to please others. This comes later on, especially in traditional schooling. This is when children are taught to be quiet, sit down, sit still. They are not allowed to express themselves freely anymore, and they become suffocated by rules and judgments that force them to put on a mask. Returning to our authentic selves is a process, as adults have many masks that we have worn for many years and even decades. When we imagine ourselves as children, and how we enjoyed doing things and how we expressed ourselves, that is our true self. We can often see how we are so far away from who we were as children because we stopped being authentic. We started conforming to what other people wanted and what society told us we had to be. Becoming your authentic self takes courage and requires us to rip off our masks and let ourselves be seen. Unconditional trust. Children naturally trust others without fear. This is their innocence that is slowly taken from them, as egos are always in fear of others. We teach children to be afraid of going outside alone, to talk to anyone, to never be outside at night, etc. By the time we are adults, we hold so much internal fear of the outside world, not realizing that the external world is a reflection of the internal self. As we are now transitioning out of the paradigm of pain and suffering, we must return to unconditional trust. Unconditional trust means we trust in Source. We trust love, no matter what. We trust that Source is always looking out for us and wants the best for us. We trust that our higher self is always orchestrating experiences that are for our highest growth, even if they seem uncomfortable or painful. This level of unconditional trust overrides any fear we have of others and the external. What others choose to do is not up to us, and we cannot control it. By surrendering and fully trusting, we take our power back. Now, I will say, in terms of that segment of unconditional trust, I think as a humanity, we all understand all of the reasons why, especially when we're talking about children, of why we have fear of the outside world, because we see the horrendous, horrible, dark things that are going on and have been going on. So in the transition, right, that is when we are starting to unpack all of this, but we understand at this point, right, why parents and teachers and just anybody has a fear of what can happen to children. And I think right now in just this current state, it's a balance between discernment and trust, right? Obviously, we are moving into the state of where we are intended as our natural state to have unconditional trust, right? That is the true state that we are moving into. But in our current experience, as we move towards that, it is a balance between discernment and trust, right? Because we are still facing the very real realities of what's going on in the world. And so I like to say that It's definitely not about fear. If you make any decisions out of fear, it's going to get reflected to you. We attract what we fear. That's the way the world works. Whatever you fear most, you will attract, because fear is a vibration. So if we're constantly in fear of XYZ happening, we will actually magnetize that experience, because ultimately the soul is seeking to face its fears. And so if we can't overcome it internally, we end up having to overcome it externally. But in this current experience, right, we have to have both trust and discernment, not fear. So what I mean by that is we do have to trust in love. We have to trust in our higher selves. We have to trust in our children's higher selves, right? But we also have to have discernment, and discernment is different from fear. Fear is a reaction. Fear comes from a wounded place. It is always going to be reactionary. Discernment comes from a place of centeredness. It comes from the heart. It is knowing what is aligned and good for you or your child, or what is not. And discernment is going to operate completely differently than fear. It is following guidance. It is following those internal instincts and intuition and nudges, rather than the kind of fear-based thinking that really comes from the mind. So that's, I feel, how we can kind of work our way up, back to the unconditional trust, because it's going to take time, as the world and humanity as a whole needs to come to more of a conscious place before that can happen, right? But now we'll move into mother-father dynamics. So the dynamics and relationships that we had with our earth parents reflects the relationships we have with ourselves and others. By reflecting on those dynamics, they show us where we have mother-father wounds. If we have mother wounds, we may reject inner nurturing, or we will cling externally to mother figures in an attempt to fill that void. If we have had a fractured relationship with our father, then we will have trouble supporting ourselves, or we will end up seeking external support and becoming codependent. Healing the roots of these dynamics means we take accountability for all choices and behaviors we have adopted, and we choose to cut cords with them. We forgive our parents for anything we feel that has hurt us, and then we forgive ourselves. Part of gaining the inner child back is also the ability to parent ourselves. We are all the child, the mother, and the father within. We must not only embrace our innocence, but be able to nurture ourselves, hold compassion for ourselves, and also hold ourselves accountable and responsible for our lives. Childlike versus childish. Childlike essences are often confused with childish. Childlike is very different from childish. Adults often reject their own inner child because they see it as childish, when in fact it is not. We are often told to grow up or stop acting like a child. This can program us to reject our own inner child and causes confusion. Childlike is the essence of innocence, childlike wonder, kindness, compassion, playful and open. Childish is the energy of entitlement, brat behavior, emotional immaturity, and lack of accountability. Because we as a collective have been stripped of our childlike wonder, we often do resort to childish behaviors. This behavior is often enabled and even encouraged. In order to truly allow innocence to come through, we must dissolve childish behaviors. This is why it is important to not only embody the childlike essence within, but also the inner mother and father. This is the Trinity, and this energy exists within all of us. Once we allow all aspects of ourselves to come into embodiment, we will transform childish behavior. Self-nurturing. Children are by nature self-supporting. When we are infants, of course, we require support from our parents or caretakers. However, we are internally self-nurturing. Babies who have proper boundaries are able to self-soothe as well as play and entertain themselves without the need of external interference. We learn lack of nurturing through our environment. So if we are neglected or abandoned as children, or we do not have those same nurturing qualities reflected to us, then we do not learn how to continue self-nurturing. Nurturing your inner child means listening to the inner child. When we are the most deeply triggered, that is where we will find the child wounding. This is when we listen to what the inner child is telling us. By listening and holding space for that inner child to express, we allow that part of ourselves to heal. We must be patient with ourselves, hold compassion, and hold space. Once we have acknowledged the rejected parts of ourselves, they will begin to become whole again. Finally is receptivity. Receptivity is a child's greatest strength. Children are open to everything. They are able to receive with open arms. They have no resistance to things unless they have learned that from their parents. Children are naturally curious, which is why they often get into things that we don't want them to, or they often make mistakes, not realizing what they did was incorrect. When you tell a child about Santa Claus or the Easter Bunny, they'll believe you because children are completely receptive to everything. They are open vessels to receiving any and all information. This is why children absorb so much in their earliest years. They learn quickly and they have the capacity to absorb information at a much more rapid rate than adults because they are receptive. As adults, we become defensive, hesitant, afraid, and full of doubts. We struggle to receive from others, whether that be a compliment, a gift, a piece of advice, or a call out. We are filled with resistance. By returning to innocence, we once again become receptive. Embrace, accept, and allow all things. So those are kind of the main traits. I think with receptivity, it's so interesting. That's why they say children learn languages really easily, right? As children. And again, I also think that has to do with the fact that they have their right brain more online as children, right? It's only over time, probably by the time you get to like 7, 8, 9 years old is when the right brain kind of starts shutting down. Because it's so much left brain activity that we're being forced into. That's why they can learn languages quickly. That's why they can learn things so quickly by observation, by watching someone else do it, by watching what others say. They are literally sponges. And as adults, we become hardened. We no longer are open to learning. We are defensive. We're resistant. We're closed-minded. I mean, just look at the nature of the world now. It's like everyone demands, where's your proof? Show me the proof. Show me the facts. Show me this. Children don't do that. They don't do that. And that, I think, is a reflection for adults. Like, I think adults are so afraid of being quote unquote naive. But in fact, it has made them extremely close-minded. And just an absolute refusal or inability to unlearn and relearn things, to be open to new experiences, to be open to expanding their perspectives. So that is one of the main focuses of the Crystal School Council. And again, they are also a co-creative council to help with new material, new curriculums, new topics, new areas of study and learning, right? There's kind of not that many areas of study and learning anymore. It seems like everything's just very streamlined, very 3D based. And there's going to be a whole new genre, if you will, of learning that is going to cover things that have never been covered before in both children education and higher education. So it's an exciting time, I think, for teachers and parents and just people who want to learn, because I think there's going to be such a variety of new things to learn that are totally different than what the typical learning topics and areas of study have been. So it's a very exciting time. Many of you might feel guided to work on this council and to be part of that co-creative process. So that is the Crystal School Council, and we'll be back with the next council, which will be the Product Integrity Council.